Hello everyone, welcome to the Traveling Vegan channel. I'm Phil Nicozisis, best-selling author of Have a Laptop, Will Travel, but we're not going to talk about that today. I'm here with a very special guest, flew in from southern Mexico region, Travis King. Welcome to the show.
Thanks, Phil. Thanks for having me, man. We'll talk about this book.
All right, let's do it.
Not that anyone asked.
Yeah, exactly. Your book just came out.
Yep.
It's a travel memoir essentially.
Yep.
About your backpacking through you went Central America, South America, Australia,
Southeast Asia, Hawaii, and Alaska each have their own sort of sections in the book.
And how much time were you actually on the road away from home?
This book is about my first 4 years. I went home every Christmas for about a week just to check in on family.
That's one thing I thought was so cool.
Yeah.
That you went against the grain with what your family and your dad especially expected of you, which there's some of that I've experienced, especially when I went on the year. But you always felt important to come back for December, for Christmas.
Got to keep those relationships, good, and I think showing up face to face and making sure that, like, hey, you see me, I'm okay. Like, let's have a hug, let's share some gifts and share the holidays.
But then you're like, once you see everybody's okay, then you're over it.
Ready
you just want to get the hell back out on the road, right?
Dirty snow, Wisconsin, like you're there in early January. It's it's all so familiar. But yeah, I always found about like 10 days, maybe 2 weeks tops, and then I'd be super ready to get back on the road and head out to wherever was calling.
Our first episode, you were here at an earlier time. We talked about the story. We talked about the book itself.
Yeah.
And what we want to talk about today is how you came about to write the book, because they say that writing a book is the closest that a man will ever come to childbirth. And having gone through that process, having no idea what childbirth is like, I have to believe that's true. Tell us about your experience and what it took to actually write the book, from idea to a physical property, which is what you have. You have one hell of an intellectual property right here, sir.
Man.
Yeah,
and so the book is about 4 years of traveling. It also took me about 4 years to write the book. I was working full-time for Remote Year, this travel company, when I started it.
Which is how I met you.
Yeah, which is how we met.
Yeah.
So, my travels now have almost ended up at about 10 years, but this book was the first 4 of those when I was really just properly solo backpacking, solo traveling. And then working on the book was about another 4 years. And yeah, like it just, it started with, I thought of the first line, and I remember being in Croatia and walking to the co-working space and thinking that, oh, that's a good first line to start the book with. Opened my laptop, wrote it down, and 120,000 words later, I have
What was the first line?
It was, I just started telling people I was leaving. Because the beginning of the book is basically like, that's how I tricked myself into actually being brave and getting on a one-way flight somewhere, is I just told everybody.
You just set it into action.
I told everybody. And then I was like, I either have to go do this, or I'm going to be somebody that says stuff and doesn't.
Yeah, somebody who doesn't do what they say.
Exactly.
So obviously there was a lot more water that had to go under the bridge after you first wrote that first line.
Yeah.
What was that like? How did that go?
It's a lot of, I think you need to have a
Did you do it all by yourself?
Yeah. I mean, I had people help me in the final, like, edits and the book design and some of the things about getting it wrapped up for publication. But the whole, writing the first draft and even the first few edits, I did it all just on my own. So I think it takes, an incredible amount of, like, personal willpower and drive, because like I was saying, I was employed while I was writing it, so it's not like I needed to do it or anything. Nobody was telling me to do it. I just woke up early before I would start work and spend an hour at a cafe.
How did you stay organized? Like something that really cool that happened a month or two before, did you write it as you went, or did you take notes and refer back to a diary? How did you do it?
That's actually one of the most common questions I've gotten from people, is like, how did you remember it all? But for me, I'm just a natural storyteller, so I think all the best stories in this book I told out loud so many times that it would have been impossible for me to get for me to forget them, because I'd already said them so many times out loud. So when I went back to write them, I was often writing about stuff that happened 7 years or 6 years before, but it all came flooding back to me because I had said the stories out loud so many times before. So when I didn't have like a secret journal. Basically, that's what people always thought. They were like,
you
must have been like journaling, and then you referred to your journal when you wrote the stories. But it was just all living in my mind because I had said everything out loud so many times before that, when I went to put,
that's remarkable. I'm very impressed with that.
Yeah.
Because I not only I kept a diary, but I had a private Facebook page where I was able to, each city that we were in Remote Year, I posted the picture that I took with a caption. And then, I went through then every month and created basically a table of contents.
Like a living log, yeah.
Yeah, a living log. And you didn't do that.
No,
I don't believe you.
I got so
By the way,
lucky,
I don't believe you.
I got so lucky. I remember when I wrote the first draft, and like the book is broken up into 4 continents. So like you can see, like this is the start of continent 3, Australia. And when I looked back at my first draft, they were like the first continent, South America, second continent, North America, Australia, then Southeast Asia. They were equal, like almost equal quarters. So I just got extremely lucky. I didn't put together like a plan or like I don't know. I didn't have any sort of like shell that I was working with. I just started writing the stories in chronological order. And then when I looked back, I just got super lucky that they broke up into natural quarters.
There's a saying, I'd rather be lucky than good.
Yeah.
But in your case, you're lucky and good.
Oh, thanks, man.
So
I think it turned out pretty good too.
Yeah, like I said, the book was excellent. Tell me about distribution. Tell me about marketing. Tell me about is it for some people? Maybe some people want to write a book. Is it easy to get it on Amazon? And what was that process like?
Yeah. So I mean, I think if somebody would have asked me what I would have guessed writing the first draft, like how much of the work, what percentage of the work is writing that first draft, I would have probably guessed like 80 or 90%. And then the last 15% is just like putting it out into the world. But really it's more like around 50%.
You're just getting started.
Draft. Yeah.
It's just the work start. When the book's done, the work
just
begins. Yeah.
And so luckily, like, you know, we've all gone through the quarantines and the pandemic of this year. I had all that time to really take that first draft that I had and just like make it better. Like just reread it, think about every sentence, think about every paragraph, and try to make it all like sing and make it one final product that has like the same tone and the same sort of author's voice throughout the whole thing. Because like I said, I wrote it over 4 years, so I could see like, oh, I was like 33 when I wrote this and 36 when I wrote this, and I could see the difference. So I really wanted it to come out as like a uniform final product.
I didn't pick up the age difference, so you definitely worked on that to scrub it up a little bit.
I wanted it to all feel like, like this, like somebody might have just, like the same way you'd sit down and read it in a week, I wanted it to feel like it was one thing that maybe I could have written in a short time or whatever. But it took a long time, and yeah, the final process of just like getting good people to give me
honest
their thoughts about it. Yeah, I had 6 of my really good friends who are all writers read an early draft of it. So I called them like my my readers team.
Sure.
And these readers all read an early draft.
That's so important.
Yeah.
And the last thing you want to do is have yes people blow smoke up your dress.
Yeah.
I just wanted to, when I had my readers and helpers, my one thing to them was, the one rule I had was, just don't make me look stupid. Like, help me from keeping to look stupid. And I think we're about 99.9 successful at that.
Yeah. I really wanted to be like honest. I had some advice of, oh, you don't need to be like that honest. But really in the end, I think I kept pretty much everything in.
There are some things, as a man, you touched on some things that no men will talk about out in public. And I can't even say them here, but you said a couple things about while you were in a relationship, how
mentally moved on sort of.
And you mentally moved on. Yeah. I can't even describe it, but like I was like, oh wow, he's done that too. I've done that here and there. So
yeah.
But it was so honest.
Yeah, I set out with the intention of just being like so honest with what I was trying to say, because I really feel like with art, or like say you're like a comedian or whatever, like it's not going to come out good unless it's pure and true and like you're being as human as possible and honest as possible. So with writing this whole book, it was really my intention to just be like brave as hell. And I knew that, like, you know, we touched on this a little bit, but like my relationship with my parents and stuff, being this honest about putting stories of drugs and sex and all this stuff in a book, I knew my parents were going to read it. And I knew that not only them, but the whole world would judge me for what it is. And in the end, I was like, you know, if it's good and it's honest and it's true, judge away. But I hope you judge it like, man, that guy's a fucking great writer and he did a good job, you know?
I can imagine, you know, a nun who has never traveled much and who's never indulged themselves. Let's say a nun reads your book, okay? Yeah. Instead of hating it and hating you, the nun, who is, you know, be the purest possible lifestyle, I assume, right?
Yeah.
I think that's a big assumption.
Yeah.
Would actually come away by saying, you know what, this guy is authentic, and the stories are heartfelt and true and real, and even in other words, even somebody who doesn't like the lifestyle that you lived in large part in your childhood would come away and say, you know, it's good.
Yeah.
It's good. I can't say it's bad. You know?
Of all the reviews that I've gotten on Amazon already, it's my favorite one is this girl that I knew in a previous life of mine, and she
I saw that one.
She like, you know, was one of those people that didn't have sex until she got married, and she doesn't party, doesn't drink, and she read this book that's a lot about partying and drinking and sex and stuff. And her review was just like, hey, this isn't for me, and this didn't make me want to go travel. It makes me really appreciate the life that I've formed for myself. But damn, is it a good book, you know? And so I was really proud of seeing a review like that, where somebody that has a totally different life, you know, they approach life totally differently than I have. They still found so much value in reading the book. So that one made me proud for sure.
And then you also might get some reviews where it's just a condemnation. And I have a few of those under my belt on Amazon. But the funny thing about the reviews, even when they're bad, you can kind of read, well, from what I experienced, you can read between the lines and where the person's coming from.
Yeah.
In my case, having lived on the remote year program, 2 of the countries were formerly communist, one was heavily socialist, and I pointed out, being a free market libertarian, free market capitalist, I pointed out just how bad that was, and that the lady who really came down hard on me you could tell was a socialist, and that was fine. So we had a different perspective,
worldview, yeah, totally.
Different worldview, different perspective. How about any other reviews that were that people you don't know, that you didn't know? You expect your friends to give you a 5-star, but was there any other ones where you could tell the lady might just have maybe going through some stuff or has issues or?
Not really. Some of the things have been positive. There was one thing on Goodreads that I noticed where the only 4-star review I got was by the same guy. And I was like, man, he really wanted to give me 4 stars and not 5 stars. Like, he logged back in under the same name and gave it 4 stars again. Like, okay. But yeah, I mean, that stuff's going to happen, and not everybody is going to love everything or appreciate everything. But I do think it's kind of hard to read this book and not think like, man, that guy really tried. And he really like bared his soul, and he really gave it his all. And you got to respect that at least. So
people ask me, now that I've written my book, now you've written your book, they ask me, okay, so what's your next book?
Yeah.
Do they ask you that?
Yeah.
And what do you tell them?
And I ask myself too all the time. I'm always like, okay, well, I got this one done. Like, what would I do next? And I think I don't know. Right now, my best idea, I think the one that I might pursue is, I'm currently pursuing this project in Mexico where I put all of my life savings into this idea. I'm basically just trying to be super brave about this next chapter of my life and try something new. And I think writing a really honest story of all the ups and downs and hurdles and best days and worst days of trying to pursue a dream and live something, like live your own truth and kind of break away from the blueprint of success in America and do something totally different than what my parents probably expected or wanted for me. And just writing that whole story down about how it went and how it turned out. And yeah.
Do you have a title idea?
No, not yet.
Because we talked about this off screen is, when I had my title, had laptop, it just came in my head in a hot yoga class.
Yeah.
I think in the 4th month, in Japan. Once I had the title, and that was like, it's like just a driver.
Yeah. The train's going down the tracks then.
And I know you had a few working titles. Whatever the title it was, you picked, which I love. Not that anyone asked.
Yeah.
Travel memoir about, what does it say? Sex, drugs, love, and finding purpose. Yeah. But once you have that vision, it's a driver, and nothing was going to stop you. Did that help for you?
Yeah, I could see the book like in the end in its final form, and I knew that like pushing through all those like early mornings and late nights of writing when nobody asked me to, nobody was like paying me to, I just wanted to. I knew it would be worth it if I could make the final product something that I was going to be really proud of. And yeah, and I think the name too. I love the name because it is like a subtle thing of like nobody asked me to write the book, and I just wanted to write it on my own. But it's also kind of in reference to that really universal travel experience of like, say you go have like a year-long trip around the world like you had, and you come home, and often I don't know, this is true for me and a lot of other people I've talked to, where you get like, say I get back to Wisconsin and I've just been in Myanmar for a month and had all these crazy things happen, all these crazy visuals swimming in my mind, and I get back home and people are like, so how was the trip? And I'm like, I don't know, yeah, it was crazy, it was awesome. I'm like, okay, so let's talk about the Green Bay Packers or like the weather or like something that's like, because people can't relate that well to these crazy big travel experiences. Which is understandable, but it was like, not that anyone asked, is also in reference to that, like nobody asked me to share this much about what the travel meant to me, but it was so important that I wanted to put it down into words and I wanted to put it into a book. But yeah, it's if you have friends that travel, basically ask them to go deeper. Don't just say how was the trip and let them say, oh, it was great, I had such a good time. Ask more questions. Ask if they got their heart broken. Ask what the worst day of the trip was. Ask if they fell in love. Ask who their best friend on the trip was. Because those are the stories that will actually pull people, pull those best moments of a trip out versus just, how was it? Oh, it was cool. And okay, let's go get a drink. That's what tends to happen.
Thank you so much, Travis. We have thank you for sharing with us what it takes to write a book, what it took that you put into the book.
Yeah.
Like I said, they say writing a book is the closest thing a man will get to childbirth, and I think we both felt it was. For me, it was the hardest thing I ever did, and it was probably one of the most rewarding.
Yeah.
How do you feel about that?
Yeah, totally. And like it was hard for me, I guess, in two ways. Like the actual effort and time and energy of trying to make it good and make it something that I knew I'd be proud of was hard. And then also sort of, I think the hardest part in the end was coming to terms with the fact that it was going to be this really public facing thing that everybody could read, and that, you know, the judgment you might face for doing that. But in the end, I think, yeah, if you're true to yourself and honest, that those feelings of moments of like doubt and wondering if you really should do it and go forward and publish the book, I'm super glad that I pushed through it all, because now, like, having people, I know people are reading the book today somewhere in the world, right? And I'm going to get messages from people that I lost track of, and they're, hey, I read your book and it was amazing, and it made me feel this way or that way, and it made me reconsider like what I should do with my life, and maybe to be a little more brave and do something like write a book or travel the world. And that's what I really like. Looking back, I didn't have that necessarily as my mission. I just wanted to write fun travel stories and tell my story. But now I think of it as like, yeah, it's a hopefully something that people can read and then feel like they don't necessarily need to stick to this preconceived notion of what success looks like growing up in America, but you can try to carve your own path for success, and it might look different than what your parents wanted you to do, but it can turn out more amazing than anything you could have ever pictured, you know, growing up in the suburbs somewhere in the U.S.
There's no doubt about it, Travis. Your book is real, authentic, entertaining, and it is a great example of someone who is living a Cape life. So I want to congratulate you and encourage you to continue to make your Cape life celebratory, adventurous, purposeful, and extraordinary. Thanks for being on the show.
Thanks so much, man. I appreciate it.
Thank you, everyone. Take care.